does your credibility come to say something like that, where the viewer can say, this makes sense? Credibility.
Right. Well, let me just tell you a story. The London Real interview, which was 2.5 hours long, and I covered an enormous amount of it, and 5G of things, and 5G was a relatively small part of it, was taken down. And the idea was it was taken down because I said 5G had to be brought into the mix of current events. Then, my son Jamie did an interview with an American doctor called Andrew Kaufman, operates out of New York State, who's done a tremendous amount of research into this whole coronavirus situation. And they had a chat, and YouTube took it down after it got 300,000 hits. They didn't mention 5G. The common denominator between my video interview being taken down and Andrew Kaufman's interview being taken down, the thing they both said is there is no evidence that's been scientifically produced that COVID-19 exists. That is what they want to shut down. Even the London Real interview, which was 2.5 hours long, and I covered an enormous amount of it, and 5G of things, and 5G was a relatively small part of it, was taken down. And the idea was it was taken down because I said 5G had to be brought into the mix of current events. Then my son Jamie did an interview with an American doctor called Andrew Kaufman, operates out of New York State, who's done a tremendous amount of research into this whole coronavirus situation. And they had a chat, and YouTube took it down after it got 300,000 hits. They didn't mention 5G. The common denominator between my video interview being taken down and Andrew Kaufman's interview being taken down, the thing they both said is there is no evidence that's been scientifically produced that COVID-19 exists. That is what they want to shut down, even more than the 5G connection.
You don't believe
to shut down, even more than the 5G connection.
You don't believe that, though. You don't believe that coronavirus doesn't exist, though.
Of course. Well, I'll just say to you, produce the scientific evidence that it does. What I've been doing, because I'm a journalist, not a mainstream media repeater of the official story, is I've been devouring information from doctors, virologists, specialists in places like Germany, Italy, Austria, America, who will never be allowed to get onto the mainstream media. Of course, they're challenging and demolishing the official narrative. That's not allowed, because this is not about a free, open debate. It's about selling a lie. Let me tell you a story that comes from these virologists, and in this case, the way I'm starting, from the research of Andrew Kaufman, a doctor of medicine who's now specialized in psychiatry in New York State. When people started getting ill in China, the Chinese authorities, and by the way, China is an absolute major global center of this cult, as is America, Israel, Britain, but China's massive. This cult has no borders. It operates across borders. So what they did is they decided pretty much immediately that the reason people were getting ill, and they only did, checked and tested a tiny number of the first, nearly 200 that got ill, that it was a bacteria or a virus, and they very quickly settled on a virus. And what they did, and a virus is not what we're told it is either. Anyway, they took fluid from the lungs of a small number of these people that got ill. And they broke down its genetic code, the genetic code of genetic material that was in the lung. And they decided that the cause of the problem was a virus. The problem is they never, and it has never, been isolated to show that that's what is causing this. There was a man in 1890, he was a bacteriologist and physician called Robert Koch, and he developed 4 what became known as Koch postulates, which have been the gold standard for mainstream medicine ever since, of how you prove that an agent is causing a disease. Number 1, all the people that get the disease have to have the same symptoms. Number 2, you have to isolate what you say is the causing agent from all other genetic material. So there's no contamination, you've only got what you say is causing it. You then inject this into a living host, and the living host has to get the disease you say this stuff is causing. And then you have to take material from that living host, put it into another living host, and they have to get the same disease. At that point, with the Koch postulates, you've got pretty damning evidence that that is causing that. None of those things, not one of those postulates, has been done in relation to COVID-19. What they've got is a genetic material from the lungs of those people. And that genetic material contains a lot of stuff that is actually in vast numbers of people. It's not causing them illness, not making them sick, but it of causes. Not now. Now, if you had flu-like symptoms in China in that period, you had coronavirus, and you had to be isolated, and there was this lockdown. They then start testing. So let's look at the test. The test they're using for coronavirus, they've never isolated it, they're testing for this genetic material. This test is called the RT-PCR test. It was invented by a man called Kary Mullis in 1984, and he said this test should not be used to diagnose infectious disease. The man who invented the test. And what are they doing? They're saying we are testing for an infectious disease. The other thing the test can't do, openly admitted, it can't test how much of, quote, virus you have. And as one American medical scientist said in a statement that I have on the website, you have to have, in his words, massive amounts of this stuff to be sick. But the test can't say how much you have, so it's irrelevant. They then start moving out, and they prepare us for it. Oh yes, oh that Chinese virus, it's coming, oh yeah. And it starts to move out. Now I know this from many, many different sources, and some of them, quite a number of them now, more and more all the time, in America and in Britain and other places have gone public on this from the medical profession. They were told that flu-like symptoms must now be designated, diagnosed COVID-19. And as I say, flu-like symptoms can come from a long list of possible causes, including the flu, of which there's a lot around this time of year. So they start diagnosing COVID-19 cases on symptoms. And the numbers start to go up. All say it could be a pandemic. Eventually the World Health Organization, which is owned by Bill Gates, the second biggest funder only to the United States government of the World Health Organization, Mr. Vaccine, wants to vaccine the world. The front man for the World Health Organization, a guy called Tedros, in other words, Gates' mouthpiece, he says, yes, it's a pandemic. Okay. So then they start introducing this test, this PCR test. And they start testing, but they're not testing for COVID-19. It's never been isolated. They're testing for the genetic material. And lots of people have it, so lots of people test positive. Problem is that while they're doing this, they don't have enough dead people. They can't produce the fact that this is a deadly virus from the number of people who are dying. So what has happened, and I'll give you an amazing piece of supporting evidence here in a second. The medical profession were told by the hierarchy, think cult subdivisions in each country, that if someone tests, this is happening all over, by the way, country after country, if someone tests positive for COVID-19, and anyone now who goes in a hospital or is treated, you fall down the bloody stairs and go to hospital, they test you for COVID-19, the genetic material, not COVID-19. They've never isolated. If someone has tested positive for COVID-19, then if they die, then that has to go on death certificate, COVID-19. And so you're having people, and loved ones and families have complained about this, as well as some doctors. Some doctors have come out and said, we're being told to put COVID-19 on the death certificate when they haven't died from it. Some loved ones have said that, their loved one died of cancer, but COVID-19 went on the death certificate. And if you notice, this is a common theme. You see it in the media all the time. The same phrase. You see it from politicians, same phrase. And these medical advisors are all connected to Gates, by the way. Yours in America around Trump and ours in Britain around Boris Johnson. The phrase is, this number of people have died, or this person has died, after testing positive for COVID-19. Not died of it, tested positive for COVID-19. But then they go on the death certificate and they become then, in the official figures, died of COVID-19. Now, if you look at the massive health crisis in Italy, it was based in Lombardy. Lombardy in northern Italy is infamous for having diabolical polluted air, just like China and Wuhan. And therefore, they have enormous amounts of lung disease there. And I'll tell you how bad it is for your health in Lombardy. This is the Milan's in Lombardy. The last figures I saw for a year is that a few hundred, less than 100,000 people died in Lombardy in that year. And the next region down for most deaths was Lazio, 57,000. That's how bad Lombardy is. So you have all this lung disease and pneumonia, and they've been redesignating it COVID-19 when they were going to die from it anyway from another cause. And the figures go up, and the figures go up, and the figures go up. And I want to read you this story. America, this is a guy who is a state senator in Minnesota called he's doctor himself, Scott Jensen. And he was interviewed on Fox News. And he said this: right now, Medicare has determined that if you have a COVID-19 admission to the hospital, you'll get paid $13,000. And a lot of this is, some of this anyway, is passed on to the doctor. If that COVID-19 patient goes on a ventilator, the hospital gets $39,000. If they diagnose a pneumonia patient as non-COVID-19, they get $4,600. And so